What's up, Legion? Welcome back to I Still Call It a Lariat. As we have said, we are doing a series of interviews leading into WrestleMania. Today's interview will be with indie wrestler and all-around great guy, the stray dog, Barrett Brown. Now, he's done some work with the WWE, AEW, and just varying promotions around the world, and he's managing to fit us into his schedule before he goes and does a tour of Australia. So that's pretty exciting. Folks, I think this is going to be a great interview. And Legion, as always, tuck your chin when you bump. What's up, Legion? Welcome to I Still Call It a Lariat. We are a pro wrestling podcast. As I've said, we are doing a series of interviews. And today we have a very special interview. I hate using the term indie star, but that's kind of where you live in the world, brother. This is the stray dog, Barrett Brown. He has done work with varying promotions, everywhere from the WWE to AEW. Man, I've seen you work with the Authors of Pain and a couple other groups with AEW and stuff like that. But welcome to the show, man. Nice to have you on.
Hey man, great to see you. Thank you for having me on, and I appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. I'm glad that you're here. Real quick before we get into some of the questions, is there anything that you personally want to promote that you're doing throughout the world of wrestling or just throughout the world of life, just to make sure that we get it out there for you?
Man, honestly, just here actually coming up. I don't know when this will be up, but tomorrow I'll be heading out to Perth, Australia for my first tour out there. And I'm excited for that. Throughout the year, I've got Germany coming up in August. I have Rome, Italy in November. So it's going to be a good traveling year for me. And otherwise, just I have a small school that I help run where I live, and I run some fitness stuff as well. So nothing fully to promote on my end, but my website has some stuff, barrettbrownpro.com, so I can put a cheap plug in right there. But otherwise, man, I appreciate you having me on, and I appreciate you letting me kind of talk about this tour coming up right before I get on a plane and head across the pond.
Absolutely, man. And I will make sure that in our description below, we will have your website and everything like that, all of your contact information. This way, some way, shape, or form, I can get you booked somewhere, man. I want to help out as much as possible, as always.
I appreciate that, man. Thank you.
It can't be a one-sided street, So let's get to some of the interview questions, the nitty-gritty, as the kids say. What inspired you to get into wrestling, man?
So really, it was always on the TV weekly when I was growing up. My parents were huge fans of, world class growing up. My mom was probably the biggest Von Erich mark in the world. And so always, heard stories growing up, and WCW was on the TV every weekend and every week in my house. And so that was
Nice.
really just a fire that I guess never died out. Goldberg was the man to me growing up. And just as I got older and I discovered, Monday Night Raw, and I saw Shawn Michaels doing his thing, it just became larger than life to me. And it became more than just, wanting to attend these shows. It became, I want to be a part of this. I want to know what those guys feel like, what that energy feels like, how it is in front of a crowd. And man, that's just a feeling that never went away. And lo and behold, now I'm 30 years old living that, young kid dream. So
I love it. So I gotta ask, who's mom's favorite Von Erich? Because that tells me a lot about her.
So she loved all of them, but Carrie was her guy.
The back in the modern day warrior phase, man. Like
100%.
listen,
Yep.
I can't be mad about that. I'm a big like that Greek god that he was insane.
Oh, absolutely. And it's really funny. Like I'm sure we'll cover this later, but just now that I've done shows with Marshall and Ross, Kevin's two boys, and that I kind of talk to them every once in a while. It kind of freaks my mom out. She's like, "You talk to them?" I'm like, "Yes, I know them now. Like they're kind of friends of mine now." She was like, "I don't understand what universe we live in that my like idols are now like kind of they're his sons are your friends." So
Yeah, right.
everything's kind of full circle,
I mean, that's kind of how it works, especially in this business, man.
Yeah.
everything kind of works full circle like that. Um, so who did you train under initially, at least?
So initially, my trainer, he wrestled as Cody Knight. His name was Cody Cunningham. He ran just a very small school locally around where my parents live, where I grew up. I was in contact with him because when I fully invested my life to this, when I told my parents, I was like, look, this is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to need your full support. Ironically, my mom went to school with this guy, and she knew that he actually had a ring. He was training guys just like in his backyard, and it was a start. And so he was a phenomenal trainer. He, taught me the foundation of what I would, build the tower upon. And from him, I went to Killerton Brooks in Waxahachie, Texas. And then a gentleman by the name of Steve Anthony, who is based out of Louisiana, he took me under his wing on the road for a while. And he, at the time, he was head trainer for Holly Race's school.
Okay.
So I got to get a lot of knowledge from him. And then eventually, um, I would go to the LA dojo under Shibata-san,
Yeah.
where I was never considered like a full blown young lion, but I was at the point of just being invited to just stay with them. So I was like the unofficial fifth for a while before COVID happened. So
Okay.
I've gotten like a big melting pot of different trainers, but I feel like overall it's helped me develop my own style. And I've just been fortunate to learn from some of the best, in my opinion.
Awesome. Awesome. For your style, who do you think are the biggest influences in the business, kind of both in and out of the ring?
I would say Shibata is a very big influence of mine because the Japanese style was always what I wanted to learn, and I never
Okay.
knew how to fully pursue it. But once the LA dojo opened up, I knew that I had no choice but to go and learn from the best, and I considered him the best. Um, if my early training laid the foundation, Shibata built the tower upon that. That's kind of what I say about my style. But as far as I consider myself a pretty decently hard worker, and that comes from my family has a lot of hard workers in it. My grandfather, my father, both tremendously hard workers, and I like to think that I inherited that trait from them. And so I just try to learn everything that I can, and I try to just be a sponge and absorb it, man. So.
Now the stray dog gimmick, where did that eventually come from, and kind of where do you base again? I guess more influence on that. Where do you kind of, is there a base character that you maybe go off of with that? Where like there was a little while where where in my gimmick world I was doing war against the wrestling universe basically, and
Yeah.
if you watch some of my old interviews, I might as well have been EC3, like
Right.
the essential character EC3, but I was doing it unknowing that he was doing his stuff, so it was really weird that we were so
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
that we were doing it. So I always wonder, like, is there someone that you could say at least at the start of it based your character off of?
So I'll say that the stray dog character is kind of based on some real life frustrations for me, um, because I've always believed that the best characters are kind of an amplification of who you are and what you believe in. And so I would say that the name came from New Japan because once I started working for them regularly, I was put in a stable called the Stray Dog Army along with Tyler Bateman and Mysterioso. Well, once it somewhat fizzled, I decided to kind of keep the name as an homage to that team. But I also have I've been made a lot of false promises in my career by a lot of major companies. And I know that business is business and that's fine. But I thought, how can I make this relatable to what I do in the ring? And so I considered, as a stray dog, I go from house to house, these large houses, beautiful houses, and as a stray dog, I go to their porch and maybe I'm fed a meal. Maybe just this already half eaten meal, but I'm never let inside. And so this character goes house to house. He does not have a home, but he will show up. And maybe one of these days he'll force himself inside.
I like
So
it.
that's where it came from.
I definitely like it. Um, what do you think in your training initially? What do you think was the most challenging part of it?
Um, I I think the small details of wrestling, the very finer details, like the in betweens of what we do, really the thought processes of what to do in between the big moves. Because I started when I was 15 years old, and as a
Okay.
15-year-old, kid starting out, I was like, wanting to learn what all these cool moves I've seen on TV and how to do them and all this stuff. But it was really the really small, intricate things that mean the most. It took me a while to understand how important they really were and that they are the most important things, of what we do. And that's how we connect with those people. And it took me a while because for a long time, just being as young as I am, I never got to really travel out of Texas a lot and wrestle guys that knew more than me. I tended to wrestle a lot of the same people over and over, and I couldn't improve that way. But once I broke out of Texas and got out and really, got in front of cameras and, you know, got into the thousands of attendance, I started to understand what the smaller moments meant and started really picking brains of people that have been in this for decades. And
Heck
that's
yeah.
when it really started making sense to me.
That makes sense. I mean, yeah, I'm a big preacher of, I mean, the psychology of things.
Yeah.
If you ever listen to me and some of my co-hosts, a lot of times we talk about rules. So
Yep.
the rules of wrestling, if and you doing something that you wouldn't normally do, but if it's something that you would do, at least it still makes sense.
Right.
My one co-host, Mike, he will bring up Captain America a lot of times. Well,
Mhm.
Captain America lifting a boulder makes sense because he's super strong. But if all of a
Yeah.
sudden he jumps in the air and starts flying like Superman, well, you broke the rules. Like that's not
Yeah.
something he would do. So
Right.
it all ends up working back to psychology and things like that. And honestly, hearing you say it and knowing that you are a younger guy, I'm in my 40s, so you are a younger guy to me. It's refreshing to me to know that at least some of the younger generation is still employing it and using it and really trying to realizing that the the psychology, but getting the emotional reaction is more important than getting the cool move sometimes.
Absolutely. I remember, yeah, it was right before Sammy Guevara got signed by AEW. He was going to do a show in Dallas, and I know Sammy very well. And I did a seminar in Bedford, Texas, for a company, and there was a guy there that he said he was very nervous because he was wrestling with Sammy in some 8-man scramble match. And his question to me was, how can he get heat and and stand out when Sammy's in there with him? He was worried about, being overlooked in the match and how he get his, heel shtick over. And I said, well, why do you think people are excited to see Sammy? And he said, well, he's going to do all his cool, 630s and all this stuff. And I said, yeah, that's cool. I said, now you be the reason that he does none of it. I said, when he goes to the top rope and you stop him, now all the heat's on you. Now you're the heel. And then whenever he does do it later, let it happen to you. And then they'll remember you. And that's an example I use all the time about full circle storytelling. And the
Exactly.
heat is just like keeping things away from the crowd until it means something.
I love it. Like I said, man, I love hearing this stuff from you because, like I said, you might actually at this point be considered 2 generations after me at this point. So, like knowing that some of these younger guys, that there are younger talent that understand what it is that the business is supposed to be,
Yeah.
the eliciting of emotions, that's amazing, man. I'm so happy that you're on the show. Like I'm even more excited about this interview now than I was an hour ago when
Good.
I was so excited to have the interview.
I love it. I love it.
Oh man. All right. So in general, obviously more of your work is on the indie level than
Mhm.
the WWE, the AEWs, the stuff like that. What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts, and how do you see the indie scene today, especially compared to how it was when you kind of broke in? What, like 15 years ago now at this point?
Yeah. Yeah. Half my life now. I've been in this over half my life, and it feels very strange to say that. But I, one thing that I notice is that obviously we live in the digital age. And so, we talk a lot about how it's not about the moves, and it's not. But we're in a situation where, you know, if you do something that catches eyes on just like a random GIF on X or Twitter, whatever it's called now, it could get you an opportunity. And social media is so free. It's a free thing that we have. It's free publicity, and anything could happen that could catch the right eyes. You never know who's watching your stuff. I also feel like the same thing could be said with psychology and the way that maybe you sell something. I remember, I think it was Red Bastien from back in the day. He refed a match, and the way that he sold a punch, he like bounced off every rope on the way down, and then like went viral. And it was something that happened, years ago.
Yeah.
And I still, I talk about how I'm a firm believer that I think that what's old is becoming new again. If you watch old World of Sports stuff, that stuff is once again revolutionary, in my opinion. But I also think that current indie wrestling is much more athletically based than it used to be when I broke in. Um, it's we didn't have like there were a lot of things that are done now that we thought was just going to be done in video games whenever I broke in, and now it's just like transitional stuff. So
It blows my mind.
yeah, yeah, and I will be the first to say that I'm guilty of doing all this spotty no sell stuff sometimes whenever it's warranted for a crowd. But if you go like to the deep South Bayou in Louisiana, they won't understand it, but they want to see you punch someone in the face, and they'll go nuts for that. So I feel like it's a lot of understanding your crowds, like GCW, for example. Yeah, you'll give them the spotty stuff, but down in the deep South, they want a story. They want to be spoon fed the
They
story, nice
they
and
still want
simple.
wrestling.
100%. They want wrestling. Yeah.
I mean, there a lot of those people, especially the older crowd, they still grew up with what Mid South and or the
Yeah.
UWF and Florida Championship Wrestling or Championship Wrestling from Georgia and things like that. Like some of the people that you're trying to sell on
Yeah.
grew up with guys like Dusty. Like, I mean,
Yeah,
you
exactly.
you got to tell a story at that point, and I like that you understand that every crowd is different as well. That's again, like I said, a lot of the stuff you're saying. It's really refreshing to hear because it's what you hear from a lot of the older talent,
Yeah.
and knowing that some of the younger talent understands it. It's cool to hear all that. So you've done work obviously with pretty much every major American promotion at this point, right? Like, I mean, you've done at least some type of work with what WWE, AEW. I'm sorry if I'm wrong, but did you do work with TNA at all, or
So there's a funny story about that. I was literally this close and it didn't happen. And the reason is very strange. So during COVID, when I was reached out to by Rocky Romero to do stuff when we were building New Japan Strong,
okay,
putting out content during the pandemic so that American audiences had content from New Japan. So we were filming at a private studio in California, and we were on, I believe, the last day of filming, and my phone rang, and it was D'Lo Brown, and
nice.
he called me and he invited me to an X Division tournament that was being filmed, I believe, that following Thursday. So this was on a Sunday. So the plan was fly home on Monday, rest on Tuesday, travel in a carload on Wednesday, and then film at TNA on Thursday, then come back home Friday or Saturday. Well, on Tuesday during that day off, I got an email from the New Japan office that someone at the filming had tested positive for COVID in a
Oh,
post-show test, and it was someone that I was in close contact with, and I could not get a test to save my life. And for me, I was like, what if I end up being that one guy that has no symptoms but ends up making someone like their roster sick, and then I'm blacklisted forever? And so I had to tell D'Lo the situation. He understood, but unfortunately, the X Division tournament that aired, I believe, like early 2021, I was supposed to be in that, but COVID costed me that opportunity.
oh
But
man,
but
that's so
otherwise,
disappointing.
yeah, every other company, yeah, I've been a part of now. I've seen D'Lo since, and he tells me he's like, man, I'm trying. He's like, if I can make the decision, you'd already have a spot on TV. He's like, I'm trying. So I've got someone in there helping me out. So we'll see. Because I worked with D'Lo in 2018, I believe, and we tore it up. And he
Okay.
was like, you need to be on TV. He's like, if I can help you, I'll help you. And that was him trying to help me. And unfortunately, circumstances beyond our
Yeah,
control kind of kept me from it.
circumstances just kind of sucked, man. Like,
Yeah, it sucks,
um,
man.
what's your thoughts on the current mainstream product, whether it be WWE, AEW, TNA, New Japan at this point, even if you want to include it, but
Yeah.
like I just in general the current mainstream product.
I think overall, it's so cool that we have so many platforms that are so readily available for everybody. Whether it's streaming, whether it's cable, whether it's YouTube, like it is everywhere now, and I love that. What I hate is that I feel like the internet community is so focused on being so negative about other people's thoughts on wrestling that it is causing wrestling to do the opposite of what it should do, which is it should bring us together. But the community is trying to tear us apart, and that should not be the case. There are some things I've seen at AEW that I disagree with. There are some things I think that are brilliant, and that could be said with literally every company that's out there right now. And, and I hate to use this analogy because it's used so much, but everyone loves ice cream, but everybody has a favorite flavor, and
Yeah,
everyone's going to have their
exactly.
favorite, man. And I feel like we should get to a point to where we understand that everybody's going to have a favorite, and that is not going to hurt anybody else.
I say it constantly where when I bring up reviews on shows or anything like that, I
Yeah,
will say, so this isn't for me. And if you
right.
like it, I get it. But I also preface it with that or say, I would love to hear why you guys like it, why the fan base likes it. Because if you guys
Yeah,
like it and I don't, I'd love to know why. Like what stood out about this for you. And then I'm as guilty of this as anyone, as you kind of jumped on with AEW originally. I will call out AEW for stuff, and then
yeah,
I unfortunately know myself well enough where I have to say it about WWE, where I was like, yes, I give them leeway, but I give them leeway because unfortunately they have been the number one product for 70 years,
yeah,
and you have a 70-year head start, and that kind of unfortunately gives you a little bit of slack
yeah.
that other
Absolutely.
companies don't have.
100%. 100%. And I feel like it's also very cool, like, that now that we have transitioned away from the Vince McMahon era, that everyone now sees that even the biggest company in the world can evolve and can still like put on something that's the same but that feels fresh and new. This whole new Netflix era, I love it. I think the
I-
production value is dope. I love the camera angles, and I feel like they're sticking to their formula, but it feels like it's brand new. Like we're in a brand new book in like this series, and I love it.
Exactly. I love one of the things I really like that they've done, not just with the Netflix, just before Netflix, they did this too, was when they brought in the new producer, the new overall
Mm,
producer for the
yeah.
show. He came in off of Monday Night Football. So
Okay. Yeah.
so the way the shots were more like how Monday Night Football would be, which gave it this much different athletic feel. And I was like, this is cool. Like
Yeah.
it's something different to everything. And I love that. I am not opposed to change. And I'm not necessarily opposed to trying something new. So that's always cool. Man, I would just hearing you talk, there's so many guys I could think of that is just in NXT that I would love to see you working with. The Ricky Stark slash Saints, those guys.
Man, ironically, I had a series with him in Austin, Texas years ago. I love Ricky to death. He's a
What
good
was it
friend.
as much fun as I would assume it would be?
Oh, we had a blast, man. It was unreal. Yeah.
That's amazing, man. That's amazing. So obviously with you've got a lot of travel dates coming up, which obviously that should be some of your proudest stuff. But in your career so far, what do you think are your proudest moments?
Oh man, that's a good question. Um, I was the final NWA World Junior Champion before Billy Corgan purchased the NWA. So I was the
Okay.
champion once the company was purchased. So I was the one that had to send the title back, unfortunately. I never actually lost it. And one of my craziest stories in wrestling has to do with that situation. So when Mr. Corgan purchased the company, he also purchased the major titles, which included mine. And, I did business because they wanted to start from the ground up and get rid of the affiliates, which very understandable. It's very oversaturated and just people purchase the name just to have the name.
Yep.
So I sent the title back, and 2 days later, the vice president at the time, David Lagana, called me. He said, "Hey man, just wanted to touch base with you. Thank you for sending this back. I've got a question though. So the title that you sent me is the one that you received, that you won." I said, "Yeah," and I've got pictures and video of that night. He said, "Great. I want you to send me every picture you have, the video, and go ahead and get a statement notarized because the guy that you beat for the title gave you a fake one. You didn't have the real title." And so yeah, and
I'm
so
sorry.
no, yeah, and I was like, "What do you mean?" And so turns out like I sent everything. And then like 2 days later, I get a call from Lagana. He's like, "Hey man, just wanted to thank you for saving us a court date. Because of you, I've got video on my phone of this guy showing up to my place in police custody with the real title that he never gave you." So it was like one last FU to the old president of the NWA because the dude hated him. But yeah, he had a Pakistani ripoff title made and gave it to me and kept the real one.
That's insane.
Insane, dude. Like
That that
insane.
is
But
that is
yeah, and like I defended
it,
that title against like Chavo Guerrero. And I was like, I defended a fake title against Chavo. Are you kidding me? Like that sucks.
all I can say to that is wrestling.
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 Wrestling. Yeah. And
But
so,
people
they
people who are outside of this business, they don't understand that this is not that uncommon of a story type of thing. Like
yeah,
I'm
it's just
like you're telling me this and I love it, but I'm not shocked. Like
yeah,
yeah, that happened.
yeah.
Yeah, of course it did.
And then so that was a cool one. And then I got to wrestle Minoru Suzuki, WrestleMania weekend 2022. That was a dream for me.
That's awesome.
All that I wanted, all that I wanted was for him to shake my hand after the match. I had that moment, and then the promoter was generous enough to give us our own room together. So I got to pick his brain for 3 hours.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
And after the match, he sat down in his chair and he said, "Ah, yes." He goes, "That match, I very much enjoy. You are very good." I was like, "I'm good now." I was like, I'm good. I'm and I got to wrestle Cowboy Bob Orton in 2013, I believe. And I just remember it was in Fort Smith, Arkansas, in front of about 1,200. Yeah, man. So I got to work with Bob Orton in, I believe it was 2013 in Fort Smith, Arkansas, in front of like 1,200 people. And man, so all that we talked about, out of respect, I went up to him and I said, "My name is Barrett. We're working together tonight. What would you like to do tonight?" And he just said, "Kid, let's just not get hurt." And that's all we talked about. We went out there and he grabbed a wrist lock and the crowd chanted, "This is awesome." And I was like, I wish wrestling was always this easy. Like, and yeah, and that was a dream to me because I was still at the time, I was 18 years old wrestling like Randy Orton's dad. I was like, this is the
Yeah,
coolest thing
wrestling
in the world.
cowboy Bob Orton, the guy
Yeah.
that was
I
in
was
the
like,
main event of the first WrestleMania. Like this is
yeah, that is insane to me. But there's a laundry list, man. I've been very fortunate, very blessed to have done the things that just this introverted kid from a small town in Texas has gotten to do, man.
oh yeah,
So
that's awesome, man. Like yeah, that's awesome to hear too. Do you, so obviously we talked about the Bob Orton match. Do you have any other matches? Obviously the Minoru Suzuki match, the Bob
yeah,
Orton match. Are there any other matches that might stand out to you as a favorite, or other let's say talent even that? Hey, like I'm excited that I get to work with this guy again, maybe, or even the first time you didn't know you were going to be it was going to be so easy, and like
yeah,
now it's like, man, I can't wait to work with him again.
yeah, man. Honestly, like a couple that just stand out to me randomly. Lance Archer. I've gotten to work
Okay,
with him a few times. And, you know, you saw him kill me on Dynamite, but like he and I are very close. And I got to work with him a few times in Dallas. He's going to hate that I'm going to say this, but before he had his pay per view match against Cody, there's a video actually of him in my ring, of him like working on like Whisper in the Wind springboards and stuff.
Okay.
So he was out here working with me, working on some stuff, some ideas he had. But him and Josh Woods, man,
Okay.
for some reason, Josh Woods and I we really hit it off. When Dark was still a thing being taped in Orlando, I got
Yeah.
flown out there and he was my opponent. We had like a little, 4-minute Dark match, but we just clicked, man. And then we got to work together again at a Ring of Honor taping, I think in the middle of last year. And I just remember I have like the worst luck in the world when I'm at these tapings as an extra, because I'm always the type that's like, okay, it's 4:30 in the afternoon. I've heard nothing. I must not be wrestling. I'm gonna go get like 3 plates of catering. And by my third plate, Josh comes up. He's like, "Hey, we're like third match." I'm like, "Of course we are, Josh. Thanks for now that I'm stuffed.
Yeah.
Appreciate
Now
it."
that I have to go throw this up.
Yeah, exactly. So, but no, we clicked, man. And they told him they wanted like 2 minutes, and he begged them. He was like, "Please give us 8. Please give us like 5, at least 5." They're like, "We can only do 2." He was like, and he came up to me and he said, "They want me to squash you." He's like, "Please get some kind of a flurry in, like get some kind of offense in. You're too good for this." And so he was very generous with me, and I always appreciated that. So I would say
That's
if
awesome.
Josh and I came to go like a good 15 to 20, I think we could tear it up, man.
Heck yeah. That's awesome, man. I'd love to see that actually. And being in the Central Florida area, I would love it if it was in this area, because
Yeah,
that'd be
yeah,
perfect for me. That means I don't have to go anywhere for it.
right.
Um, Amongst all your travels and everything, obviously you are finally. It feels like from talking to you, you're finally hitting your stride in the business. You've got your big travel years. You're getting calls from some of these promotions. What advice would you give to anyone trying to make it in the wrestling business today?
I would say to remember why you became a fan. Remember why you fell in love with this, because once you break in, if you fully invest your time into this is going to turn into a lifestyle. This is the most rewarding, but also it can be the most disheartening thing in the world. Wrestling, it will give you what you put into it one way or another, whether that is in knowledge or opportunities. Um, and when it gets hard mentally, and it will, very often it will, you have to remember why you started. And my biggest fear has always been that these opportunities that seem to have somehow just slipped out of my fingertips. For example, my dream is to go to Japan. And I was supposed to go in 2023, and I was locked for Kurikan Hall. But our format changed on New Japan Strong to the bigger pay per view events. And when that happened, it put the contracted talent at the forefront, and it pushed verbal agreement guys to the side. I was in that group. And so it nixed my trip to Japan. And that was one of those moments where I had to remember why I fell in love with this. And my fear has been falling out of love with it. And I have always said that I will gladly step away and remain a fan before I fall out of love with this. And so just remember why you started. And to anyone that's, trying to get their stride in this and trying to figure out who you are, I would say you have to think about, if you were yourself as a kid in that front row, if you were watching you as a wrestler, would you be a fan of what you're doing? And if you wouldn't be, then change something.
Exactly. I like that. I really dig that. I have a theory that, to go along with something that you said earlier in the interview, the best characters are always yourself turned up, right?
100%.
I actually have a theory that it's either one of two versions of this. It's you, the
Yep.
most realistic version of you, just the volume's up to 11.
Yeah.
Or it needs to be the exact opposite. Like, it needs to be the opposite end of the spectrum. Timeless Tony Storm is obviously not Tony Storm,
Right. Yeah.
and like I'm like, you either need to go, it needs to be on one end of the spectrum or the other. Like, it
Yeah.
needs to be so close to your heart, or something that's completely off the wall from who you are as a person. And
Yeah. And there's no in between on that. It has to be
no,
all.
and yeah, and kind of how you've talked about throughout this talk is this conversation. You can't be half in.
Right.
You can't have 1 foot in, 1 foot out. You either want to be doing this or you don't want to be doing this.
Absolutely.
And if there's a chance that you don't want to do this, you need to figure something else out, because wrestling will eat you up easily.
Absolutely.
And I love the fact that you yourself have to remind yourself to fall back and, like, remind yourself why you fell in love with it. Remind you of the 4-year-old kid that was watching World Class, that was watching old school WCW Saturday Night, that,
Yeah.
saw Steamboat versus Regal for the TV title and whatnot.
Right.
Like,
Yeah. Exactly, man. Yeah.
like I go back and watch some of the stuff now that I loved as a kid, and I'm like, I want to make sure I still love this. Like, this is like, is this still interesting to me, even though I'm an adult now? And I constantly tell people that wrestling and Star Wars kind of coincide a lot of times, because they're both. There we go. You're still there.
Okay. Thank goodness. Good Lord, man.
You're still there. No worries. No worries. Sorry, folks. We had a little
Good.
technical difficulty there. Little
Yeah.
snafu, if you will.
Man.
But
Yeah.
I always compare wrestling to Star Wars. Like, it's
Yeah.
two fan bases that we all fell in love with whatever the fan base was as children. And then a lot of times we become jaded as adults because they're not gearing it to us anymore. But they never did gear it to us. They geared it to an 8-year-old.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. And that's, kind of my response to people that always, they use the word fake for what we do. But it's the same people that go crazy for the Avengers. It's like, they're not
Yeah.
really like fighting aliens and flying around throwing
Right.
gigantic hammers at each other, right? Like, it's not. So
Yeah, right. Like, I make the comparison. We're stuntmen.
yeah, 100%.
Like, I make the argument 100 out of 100 times. It's like, okay, is a movie real? No, a movie's fake. Is what a stuntman does real? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, well, imagine being a stuntman that has to do it in one take in front of a live audience.
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
that's what pro wrestling is.
And I always tell people too that
And then get up. Yeah.
You're good. And I always tell people too that the emotions that I feel doing this are the most real thing I've ever felt in my entire life.
Exactly. Oh man. All right. So I actually don't have any more questions for you, but this has been an amazing conversation, man. I'm so happy that we got in on this.
Absolutely, man. Yeah.
I know, obviously, with all your travel and stuff like that, man, I'm going to throw this out there. If you are ever back in the Central Florida area to do work or anything like that, please hit me up. Let me know. If nothing else, I have a bunch of friends that the connections that you will make with them are probably beneficial to your career. So
Awesome.
I would love,
Awesome.
I'd love to catch up, guys with last names like Nakamura. So
Yeah, man. 100%. That's awesome. I
So,
appreciate that.
like, yeah, let me know. If nothing else, we'll go grab something to eat and go roll jujitsu one night if you're in the Orlando area.
Absolutely.
And there's a ton of guys in that school that, like I said, they're probably the people you want to be talking to. So I love having you here, man. Good luck on your tour. I hope nothing but the best for you. And last thing, if you want to just throw out any more promotional stuff for you, even if you just want to give the website address again, just to make sure.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, my website, www.barrettbrownpro.com. Go follow me there. Links to socials are all on there. The YouTube channel, it's also on the website. Go hit the subscribe button on that. There's a lot of stuff going on there. A lot of new shorts are on there. A lot of matches with guys you probably will recognize, and including guys like Jacob Fatu, Minoru Suzuki, Jonathan Gresham, just to name a few. But man, this has been awesome. and I feel like this is not the last time we're going to talk on one of these podcasts.
Not at all.
Yeah,
Barrett, I want you back on. I kind of want you back on as soon as you get back from Australia, man.
love it.
I'd love for you to email me and just let me so that we can talk about how the trip was.
Yeah, dude.
I'll have you on, man. I'll have you back on here to talk about one of the topics that we have coming up if you want.
Dude.
Like I will literally save my creme de la creme topic for when you come back, because the one that we are holding out on right now is everyone's favorite title belt design.
Oh, I like that. I already
Yeah,
got mine
so
in mind, man. Yeah, I love that.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think all of us are going to come up with like 2 or 3, and then we're just going to go off on tangents about
Yeah,
it. So,
100%. Yeah.
man, let me know when you're back. I want you back on the show for that, man. Like, let me know. Other than that, dude, thank you for being on here, brother. I'm so happy for everything that you're doing in the business. And Legion, as always, remember, tuck your chin when you bump.